Hi, my name is Dina, Deleasa-Gonsar, and welcome to the first episode of Holidays at the Kitchen Sink, where the goal is to make things merry, not miserable. In this short series, I'm going to share a couple of recipes with you to hopefully make your menu planning a little bit easier and some thoughts to encourage you through this chaotic season. So first up, I'm going to teach you how to make a super easy roasted chicken because I believe having a solid main dish in your repertoire approaching the holidays makes everything a lot easier. We're going to be doing a delicious compound butter with Calabrian chilies, a little bit of honey, and we're going to put that all over the outside of a spatchcock chicken. More about that later. And we're going to roast it. So here we have a spatchcock chicken. And what that means is it's a full chicken that is butterflied and the breastbone is cracked. Now, instead of doing that on your own, you can buy them this way at your local grocery store. Or if you're not finding them at the grocery store, your local butcher or maybe the butcher behind the counter at the grocery store can do this for you. I mean, that's what I do. Because like I said, making it merry, not miserable. So here we have the butterflied chicken. And what I like to do is lay it flat on the roasting pan. But this is actually one of those cookie sheets that you can see this little contraption here with all of the grates. I like to lay it on top of one of those and it helps the air circulate around the chicken, more of an even cook in my opinion. So what I'll do to begin with is I always pat the chicken dry. I always like to independently salt and pepper. I know we're going to be putting that into the compound butter, but I feel like it's always a good idea to, if you're working with chicken or meat, do a little bit of extra salting along the way. A little bit of salt, and I use kosher salt just as a rule of thumb when I'm cooking, most typically. So when you hear me say salt, it's a kosher salt. All right, so I prepped my chicken. Next, we're going to move on to the compound butter. So a compound butter, what is that? Sounds fancy. It's really not. It just means you're adding different ingredients into already softened butter. A lot of the times I will do a rosemary and garlic compound butter and I put it all together and I roll it up into parchment paper. I even keep it in the freezer. So whenever I'm making a steak, I can throw a pat of butter. It's already seasoned with that great rosemary and garlic flavor. Maybe you're a fan of fish. I like to grate some lemon zest into the butter. Again, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of parsley. It's herby, it's fresh. Keep that in the fridge or freezer. Also nice to have around the holidays to put on the table with your bread or if you do any kind of dinner rolls. It's just an extra little elevated treat for your holiday table. And in this case, we are going to do one for the chicken. And it's going to be have a little bit of a sweet heat, I guess you can say. I love Calabrian chilies. I love chili oil, anything that's spicy. But don't worry, this isn't super spicy hot. So in here, I have some butter that's already softened to room temperature. You want it to be really pliable so you can work everything through. And I'm going to chop up a little bit of garlic. Let me get on top of that. Gonna peel this up. I mean, in my opinion, you can never have too much garlic, but I'm sure there's people out there who maybe disagree. So use your judgment. I am going to use 2 small garlic cloves, which is going to equal like a half a tablespoon of garlic. So we're gonna kind of chop that up really fine. We're gonna mince that, I guess you would say. So someone once asked me how to cut garlic. I don't have any like super special way, but I do slice the clove long ways and then give it a good chop. So I'm going to add that into, I have 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter in here. And I typically like to work with unsalted butter, especially in baking. So here I have my garlic cloves in here. And then the rest, it's really just adding in. I'm going to use a little bit of rosemary here. This rosemary is from my garden, which makes me look like I'm Martha Stewart, I know. But even during the winter, I try to grow some what I call kitchen herbs, which is rosemary, which honestly, I've had it on my deck through the winter. It does last. I don't know. That's the only thing I have a green thumb with. But I'm going to chop up, again, about a half tablespoon of some fresh rosemary. Again, you could find this in your grocery store. It's usually around where I see the lettuce and the carrots. Okay, next up, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. And then I'm going to use a quarter of a teaspoon of black pepper. And then I'm going to go in with the good stuff. I'm going to do a tablespoon of chili oil. And then I'm going to add a little sweetness to it with a quarter cup of honey. And there, the hard part is done. And with my rubber tip spatula, I'm just going to work this in. So you can see it's becoming all uniform. Make sure to get the sides of the bowl too. A lot of the times the salt and pepper and seasonings get stuck to the side of the bowl. You want all of that up in this butter. All right, now that my butter is all one, we're going to spread it onto the outside of the chicken, and I'm going to stuff some into the cavity. And then we're going to get it roasting in the oven at 400 degrees. So now I've been prepping the chicken with the butter mixture, and I have some of it underneath the skin, and I'm just going to use this rubber tip spatula just to spread it out all over the top of the chicken. So now I'm going to place some foil over top of the chicken before I put it into the oven. I'm going to leave it on top of there for about 20 minutes, pull it off for the last 20 minutes of cooking. This is going into the oven at 400 degrees, and first guess, it's going to take about 40 to 45 minutes. We want the internal temperature to reach 165 degrees, and it's also going to make your house smell amazing. Here we go. So my chicken is out of the oven, and it is roasted beautifully. I'm so excited. So what I did was we had it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes. For 20 of those minutes, I had it tented with foil, pulled the foil at 20 minutes, and let it roast for another 20, 25 without the foil on. And I made sure that the internal temperature reached 165 degrees. Then I took the pan drippings and I made a little bit of a gravy, which was simply just the drippings from the pan poured into the pot with a half cup of chicken broth and a little bit of cornstarch, whisked it over a medium heat until it thickened a little bit. And it's going to be a delicious addition to this chicken. So I'm going to cut it up and place it on this tray right here. And this is a bed of arugula. And one of my tips for around the holidays or when you're entertaining a lot, I like to keep a bag of arugula and fresh cranberries in my refrigerator, not only to make really delicious salads with, but also as a garnish. So when I'm plating something like the inside out stuffed baked potatoes that I'm going to show you in another episode, sometimes I'll take the cranberries, put them down on a plate. They serve as a beautiful bright red vehicle for those potatoes to sit on top of. In this case, the arugula is going to serve as a beautiful bed for the chicken. And when you have the chicken on top of that and a little bit of the gravy, it's not such a bad thing to serve with. So I'm cutting off the legs here. And then I'm going to carve out the chicken breast and the wings and place all the pieces onto our plate here. And you can carve this however your heart desires. If you like to maybe take everything off the bone, serve it that way. It looks also beautiful down this bed of arugula. So here we have this beautiful roasted chicken. It's almost ready to serve up. What I'm going to do is take a little bit of the gravy and just spoon it over top. Makes it glisten, but also makes it taste even better. And I'm also going to serve this alongside in a gravy boat. So if anybody wants a little bit extra, they got it. And the last thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of lemon, not because I want a lemony flavor per se, but I find that it cuts through the fat, the spice, the butter, and just adds a little bit of a brightness at an end, just a little bit of a kick. So just a little bit squeezed over top, and I'll nestle that in the middle because it also looks pretty. And here we go. This is a beautiful main dish for your holiday table. You could make the compound butter the day before. You could also butter up the chicken earlier in the day, put it in the oven when you're getting close and ready to serve. It only takes about 45 minutes to roast, and it looks like something that's super fancy. And you know what? Just because it didn't take all day doesn't mean that it's not. I hope this dish helps make your holidays a little bit more merry and a little bit less miserable. So, in addition to preparing your tables for the holidays, I wanted to also offer some encouragement to help prepare your hearts because I know it's a super busy time of year and you're probably running on all cylinders, but with maybe not so much of a full cup. So, my heart is not only to supply you with recipes, but to supply you with, I guess, some food for thought, you could say. And today it comes from Luke 12, chapter 12, verses 24 through 26. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? And during this busy season, I sense a lot of us are probably worrying about a lot of different things at a lot of different levels. And I'm reminded of a time last year I happened to go through thyroid cancer. And with that, you're going to a lot of doctors and seeing a lot of specialists, and the medical bills kind of mount up. And every now and again, you're getting those letters to your inbox or your mailbox stating you have a new bill. And Brian and I were sitting at the breakfast table and we were watching TV. Sienna was on her like fourth piece of bacon, and I know it was a Sunday morning and I just couldn't get off my mind a bill we had recently received, and it was a higher number than I had expected. I know a lot of us deal with this, and especially now at this time, the finances of things are really hitting us hard, and it just opened the door to worry. I was thinking about it overnight, and even though Brian assured me things were going to be fine, we were going to figure it out, I couldn't help but be uneasy. And so, fast forward, we went to church. And as we sat there, Sienna hopped off to Sunday school. And I wasn't really into it, to be honest, that morning. I was just very discontent. I was very worried. My mind was other places. I think we've all been there before. We're sitting in church and our attention just isn't there, it's on everything else. And so, the pastor started a sermon on, what do you think? Worry. And as soon as he started speaking, I started like shifting uncomfortably in my seat, searching in my purse, which I just found Hello Kitty lip balm and goldfish snacks, but of course, no tissue. And he said that worry is best understood as a symptom. Something else is at work in our hearts, and worry is the outcome. And we're believing that there's only so much of God to go around and only so much that He can do in our situations. And I started to tear up because I'd never thought of worry in such a way as just a symptom and not an all encompassing emotion. And what brought even more tears to my eyes was the timeliness of the pastor's message. And that's something I felt through my whole struggle with cancer, is that in those moments where I was the deepest in the valley, people ask you, how do you keep your faith? It's because God continually shows up. He would continually meet me there in my depression, in my worry, in my anxiety. And that's exactly what He was doing in real time at that moment, saying, Dina, I know you're worried. I know you're worried about the bills. I know you're worried about your health, but I am still walking beside you, and I'm going to still provide. Consider the ravens, like it said in Luke. They're just birds. And if God cares that much about the birds, he cares even more so about your situation. So whatever anxiety or worry you're dealing with this holiday season, I challenge you to give that up to God and let him shoulder and share the burden, because he cares more about you than sometimes we want to give him credit for. And he can do things that go beyond the little box that we put him inside of. Praying that this message makes things a little bit more merry and a little bit less miserable.